Back with our special guest segment here on A Shot of Business Central and a Beer. We briefly mentioned that Mark Heick is with us, but we didn't really ask him what he does and, to tell us a little bit about himself. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been, for business-wise, implementing ERP systems now for coming close to probably 25 years. Working with Nav and Business Central now for over 15 years. I've been at Solution Systems working here. I started out as a business analyst project manager for distribution, manufacturing, warehousing. I dabbled in probably all the other types of granules available. And for the past 10 years, I have been kind of overseeing a group of project managers and developers and business analysts and overseeing all of our Business Central projects.
So you started with about Nav 4.0, is my guess?
At the end of 4.0, but the first one I really dug in and learned was 5.0.
So now up through Business Central version 16. Yeah.
Yes.
All
We've got an expert in the house.
Well, hopefully we'll find out.
So I'm excited. We will get to ask some questions of Mark about something that's, I think, very important to a lot of people, which is, okay, this software is great, but now how do I get it up and running? And it's not usually an easy, simple process. Mm-hmm. Some companies do start from scratch where they have no legacy information or data or processes that they have to worry about. But most of the time, they've been running some other system. So trying to, or multiple different systems that aren't talking to each other. And now they're implementing one integrated ERP system. And that can be difficult. So that's kind of what we specialize in here, is helping people with Business Central and figure out how they can get it up and running. So that's going to be our focus here today, is on questions about how do we do that and what are some of the ways we do it and so on.
Well, before we start asking Mark questions, let's ask him first. Do you have any hobbies or interests?
Yeah, I'm a pretty simple person, but yeah, I really always have enjoyed sports, watching sports, playing sports. During this time, it's been a little bit more difficult. There's not much happening in the world of sports. Get made fun of around here from the Chicago area as a Dallas Cowboys fan. Watch them closely and pretty much watch all their games. Also, just a personal note, part of a big family that all lives in the area, so spend a lot of time with family since we're all in such a close proximity.
So a Dallas Cowboys fan in the home of the Chicago Bears.
Absolutely.
He's not from Dallas.
Is that easy or difficult?
It's been easy because the Bears have never been so very good. So
like you're Super Bowl champions or something the last 25 years.
Well, I understand, but I'm probably giving away my age a little bit, right? So I was in college during all the Super Bowls, right? And Dallas was very good through the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. So growing up with, I have three brothers, so we were all big Cowboys fans. And during that time, really, other than a couple of years in the 80s, the Bears were never any good. So it was pretty easy to drift towards them. First couple games I went to was down in Texas Stadium. I have an uncle that lives down there and would take us to the Thanksgiving games. So we'd go down there every other year for Thanksgiving. He'd take us to a game. So he kind of just bought our fandom.
There you go.
There you
That's
go.
one way to put it.
Certainly backs up his game.
Well, shall we get started then with grilling Mark over here?
Yeah, let's do
You want to
it.
hit him with the first question?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I will. Which types of companies do you believe are a good fit for Business Central?
Yeah, I mean, Business Central is, it's a vast, a lot of companies that it can be. And to be honest, in my role as implementation director overseeing it, I don't really get, a choice of which one. So many of the, as sales goes through and makes their decisions, we take on any ones they bring. So I see it for, small, medium. We even have some large size. So if, depending on what you're doing, anywhere from 3 users up to over 250 for sure. We have customers. So I think that the best fit when you look and we talk about it is just not size, but we talk about the culture of these companies. The best companies that we work with while implementing are the ones that are able to commit to change, understand, and not be stuck in a certain way. They're willing to change. And what I'm finding too is just as we go through this, it does take a full team. So a full team on the client side committed to it, with a lot of buy-in from the upper management to make sure that these projects go smooth. So those are the best ones that I enjoy working with, because they're willing to indoor change and work through implementations.
So what you're saying is one of the beauties of Business Central is that it's versatile and can work with many different industries.
Yes, it's. I think they when Microsoft came out and looked at all the different ways and verticals, right? One of the great things about it is there is so many different verticals and so many different, just not even using verticals, just between distribution, manufacturing. The software really is a good fit for both of those, financials, service management. There's so many different types of industries that it's really hard for me to say it's a good fit for something in particular. It's typically a good fit for a lot of companies.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of companies that have that broad set of requirements, right? So maybe you have inventory you need to keep track of and purchase, and obviously you sell it, but you may also be a manufacturer who's manufacturing things, and then when you sell it, you have to service those items that you sold, right? So I think to your point, it seems like companies that have like a broad range of requirements, inventory and manufacturing related, seem to be a good fit. But a lot of our customers just are financials only.
Right.
So
we do quite a bit of financial only projects, and it's definitely a good fit for that, and has a lot of functionality in that. It also gives them the ability to move it's not just financials, which is great. So a company that only does financials has the ability to grow into the software.
yeah. All right. So Michael, nice softball question to start.
That's right.
We'll crank up the difficulty level here a little bit. So I'm not going to go out on a limb here too far, but everyone knows not every ERP implementation is successful, right? Because as we said, it's not always that easy.
Right.
So Mark, what do you see as the biggest differentiators between the companies that are able to implement their new system successfully and those that are not as successful?
Yeah, to me it's easy, right? So I've always, as I mentioned earlier, I have a team of project managers, developers, business analysts, and I always say my team will never make a project successful, right? It comes into the client, right? I can make a project go. My team can work really hard and make it, go live. But to be successful, it really takes a good client team who's dedicated to the project, who's willing to learn the software, who's willing to change and review processes. To me, that's where the differentiator is which clients actually take the project on, have the time, commit the resources, and have the right people in place to have a successful implementation.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, when you invest in this type of software, you've got to be committed.
Yeah, I always tell people, look, you have this new software, Business Central, or really anything, right? At some point, if you're going to use it successfully, you have to learn how it works. So why not learn it soon, now, before you get to the point where it's too late,
Right.
or
Yeah.
right, you cause yourself problems.
Yeah, put the time and effort in before it goes live, for sure.
Correct. I always use the word ownership, right? The clients that take ownership of the software will be the most successful. The clients that look and say, well, your software is this, or your software doesn't do this, they're not taking ownership and saying this is going to be part of their business, and the implementations that go are a lot tougher to go through successfully.
So speaking of successful then, how do you judge or determine, what part of an implementation project or how an implementation project is successful?
It's a good question, Michael. So a lot of customers, they're going to look at this and say, is it a success? They're going to look at on time, on budget. I am prepared to say I look at on time, I look at on budget, but those necessarily are not my drivers for success in the typical terms of what you do. Obviously, it is part of it. What I'm looking for is my goal is to have the client get through an implementation and be able to not interrupt their business, right? I want to get them live on what they do today. I try to get them to not do everything all at once, to be as successful as they can, but getting it live in a shorter period of time, right? So I look at on time. We obviously watch the budget. It's very important to everyone. We look at the timeline. It's very important. But my key measures are making sure that they implement it successfully and we do not disrupt their business.
Does the customer agree with your measurement of success?
They only agree when it doesn't happen that way, right? So if it does disrupt their business or if it does do that, right? A lot of customers, they look, right, they're watching, is this on time, is it on budget? We do differ in the ways that the success of it. We, at times, we do have the same, we're looking at the same measures, we're looking at that to see if it's successful, but a lot of times I might say it's successful a couple of weeks into, a month into a go live, right? Where I know that this is successful is where it might take the client a few more months to come around and see the things that I saw that took place and the differences of how the system is working to their business, to then come back to the same measures that I was looking at to say that it was a successful implementation.
So do you think there's really a way to ensure that, everyone's idea of success is the same?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the key things is to always set some goals up front. What are we trying to do? What makes a successful implementation, right? Make sure that we know, it's important for me to understand what is important to the customer. What do they consider successful? So that I can then make sure throughout the project that we're meeting in project status meetings, once a week or every other week to verify that we're staying on track and that we're not only doing the things that I know is going to make the systems, the system and the implementation successful, but that we're also hitting on the customer's goals and what they're looking for to be successful. Lastly, also, I think it's important that after the project to really meet, understand, talk about where we are on those original goals, and to see how we did, and to go through why maybe some of the stuff wasn't as successful as what they thought, or what was the reasons. But I think it's important to constantly meet, and as I said, some of the goals of the project in the beginning don't always end up being the same goals of successful measures at the end. So to kind of, throughout the project, adjust those if they need to be, right? Adjust what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
There's times that projects are, a 9-month project suddenly has to be a 6-month project because something's going on. Goals are adjusted. Timeline becomes more important than maybe getting all the features into the system. So readjusting and what those goals are is, can quickly change on what is a successful project in people's eyes.
And come up with a better list than get the system up and running, right?
Yes, correct.
Spend a little more time on it than that.
So there's no line of communication, right?
So that's so whether you're successful or not, right? Hindsight's 20/20, and I think there are always some lessons learned of going through any big project, right? So whether it's like an ERP business system implementation like this, or you're just remodeling your bathroom at home or something, right? You always go back, man, and in hindsight, I wish we would have done this,
Always.
or I wish I would have done that. What are some things, have you heard, when you talk to users after the fact, that we can share with people, like common things that you've heard after the fact where they say, boy, I really wish we would have done this?
Yeah, a couple that popped in my mind right away is you hear a lot of, we should have spent more time in the system. We should have spent more time understanding how the system works, setting our processes, instead of trying to duplicate how our system works today. A lot of times we get into these implementations and they're used to their system working a certain way, and they want to make Business Central the same system, right? And it's, instead of learning how it works and doing it, they end up starting to want to modify it, right? So we typically try to hold off on those enhancements until they really learn it. But in some cases, they just never do. So that's one of the big ones we hear. The second one I hear a lot is data migration. That we didn't understand the effort it was going to take to get our data out, to scrub our data, to clean our data. So a lot of times if we do miss a timeline, it might be because of data migration, that it took way longer than what people were prepared or what they thought would take to get their data cleaned up. It's typically not getting the data into Business Central. We have some really good tools to bring in the data, but it's getting it out of a legacy system, cleaning the data up. They want to get clean it up, get rid of some stuff before they import it in. They don't want to bring in bad data. So we hear a lot of that. The data was much tougher sometimes for them to get out of their system.
All right. So you've been implementing Dynamics on-premise, I guess you said, since NAV 5.0. And now a lot of the implementations have basically transitioned to cloud-based. What are some of the key changes you've seen as companies move to the cloud, and what have you had to do differently?
Yeah, there are a couple things that I've noticed is, in the past we did a lot. There was more people wanted to use the system a certain way and do this. A lot of our customers, we hear it constantly over and over when we start. We want to use the standard product as much as possible, right? We're not used to hearing that, or when we did hear it in the past, they didn't really mean it, right? They'd say, it was just something they felt they had to say. We want to use as much standard as we can, and then you'd get into the implementation and they would modify it quite a bit. We are definitely seeing that, people are enhancing Business Central, but it is less. People are using a lot more of the standard features. So we are seeing that. The other thing we're seeing is, that I've noticed is people are more willing to go in and learn some of this stuff on their own, watch videos, kind of get ahead and try to implement some of this stuff on their own. Even in when using some of these add-ons, whether it's the Lanham product that we're gonna talk about later, or some of the other add-ons. It's they can go search for them, right? They can find these apps that do what they're looking for it to do. They can watch a video of it right on the marketplace. So, and also see free trials where they can load it, install it, and start to test it out, even without really talking to us. I don't necessarily always recommend that, but they do have the ability to do that. And so I think a lot of those things are becoming easier for them.
And I think a lot of that is Microsoft is marketed that way, right? Where it's pretty much buy, and they make it seem as you can just buy it and log on and you're good to go within 2 hours. Download an app, jump on, and it's really not that easy.
It's not plug and play, no.
Exactly.
But it is closer than it used to be, right? I mean, I guess is the way I'd put it. It is not a plug and play. I do recommend having a partner, having them help you with a lot of these things. But it is a lot closer to being able for people to get up and running with less help if they want to.
Okay.
So have you noticed anything that's kind of hasn't changed from NAV to Business Central? I mean, is a lot of it the same, or would you say a lot of it's different?
Yeah, I think implementation wise, it can be very, very similar. Right? It's the going to the cloud hasn't really changed too much of, whether it be functionality. There is more, obviously more of the connection with Office 365 and stuff that we have to learn to help implement it. But I think some of the things that we've seen that has been different is that we do have, with subscription-based licensing, that the startup costs for someone to start an implementation can be, I don't know, you're in sales, but very cheap, right? I mean, you can get this
$200.
Couple $100, you can get the system up and you can get people into the system, right? That's way different than it used to be. To me, that's a great thing for the client, but it also makes implementations tougher because in a lot of times, the team's not as committed, right? Maybe upper management said, you know what, go ahead. I don't know that we did all our research or if this is the right system, but for $300, let's give it a shot. Right? That's where I talked earlier that I like, the clients where they have, from upper management all the way through the people that are, wanting to implement this and committed to the project. Sometimes you don't see that in these ones where, in these cloud implementations, and it's harder to get them, get them going and going all the way through because they're just not committed as much as they used to be.
It's a lot easier just to abandon it too.
Right.
Absolutely.
You only commit in a couple $100. If it doesn't work.
Yeah, you run into one little roadblock and you
Yeah.
might just call the whole thing off, right? Whereas before, if you spent tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment and software for an on-premise solution, you aren't going to walk away so quickly.
You were more willing to look at alternative ways to do different processes instead of just saying, you know what, we're going to stop and go somewhere else, right?
All right, let's have some fun. I got a couple fun questions here. So, let's say Microsoft grants you a wish or multiple wishes, whichever, on ways that you'd like to see Business Central improved. What are you asking for?
So yeah, I have a couple. I spend a lot of my time as you know in these projects where I get more heavily involved when it comes into manufacturing and warehousing. So I end up with a lot of different requests there. But the planning tools, right? So the planning worksheet has a lot of built-in rules on how things work. So I would love to have, you know, and I think we need that for MRP and MPS to function correctly. But for some of the smaller companies, they're looking for more simplified ways of just reorder point quantities and reorder point quantities and ROQ. So they want to, just simple tools that, hey, when I get below this, order me this, right? And don't worry about an overflow level. There's other things and stuff involved in how that MRP and MPS planning and requisition worksheets work. I'd love to have some simple tools that are very basic that some customers can use to plan their purchases around. Second, I'd like for permissions, right? I think everyone struggles with permissions. I'd love to have some different tools where we can make the ability for them to set up the permissions easier. And the last thing is when we get into warehousing, right? There's a bunch of different levels of warehousing and how everything works, and I just think there's some ways that they can improve some of the flow within the more advanced warehousing to make life a little bit easier on the client. So I'd love to, I get it. I'm not going to get in too deep on those. Yeah. But the good news is they do have, I don't know how much you guys on your podcast talk about Business Central ideas, where you can go in and put your ideas in there and write anything that you want, and people vote on it, and some of these ideas actually get passed. So at least everybody has the ability to put their suggestions in, and they do get looked at.
Yeah, we have talked about it, and as a matter of fact, I think in the last release, several of the new features were directly from those top ranked, top vote getters for those ideas.
If your viewing is big enough in the future, maybe I'll have you guys put some of my ideas out there for people to vote on, because I don't seem to get mine voted through all the time.
In the words of Ken, we're worldwide, baby.
That's right. I'll send them to you guys and maybe get those on the air and get some of mine to get passed through.
All right, so the bar is closing. You're talking to someone. You've only got 30 seconds to convey some words of wisdom to help them get their new Business Central system implemented successfully. What do you tell them? And I'm timing you.
Tell me when to start.
You got 30 seconds.
Starting now?
Starting now.
Set goals and milestones and manage to them, right? It's very important to make sure we're setting goals and milestones so we know where we're at in the project. Don't complicate things. Set phases to the project when possible. Crawl, walk, run, right? Get up and running. Don't assume how the product works. Learn it, test it, and verify it. Lastly, document what you want the system to do so you know if you can be successful.
24 seconds.
I got 6 seconds to spare, and that was 4 good points.
I like this quick pace, Michael.
All right.
Let's hit him with a speed round.
Are you ready, Mark?
I'm always ready, Michael.
All right. Would you say implementing Business Central Cloud takes more, the same, or less time than an on-premise implementation?
I would say this is the speed
Quick,
round.
man, quick.
Sorry. It's the same or less, right? It's in between those two. They do give some ability to do quicker startups, more assisted setups. Add-on and extensions are easier to install and set up. It's not as quick as you would. It's not as quick as the client would want it to do, or their perception is. But it can be a little quicker.
As could your answer.
It's my first time in the speed round.
All right, next. Does the customer expect the cloud implementation to be shorter or longer than an on-premise implementation?
I answered both questions in one and last. That's speed for you.
Yep.
Less.
During this pandemic, the less contact we have with other people, the better it is to combat the spread of coronavirus. That being said, can a Business Central Cloud implementation be completed 100% remotely?
It can, and it has. So, and we have another one coming up this Monday that will be going live 100% remote.
Do more customers like or dislike not having total control of security and software updates?
I think they like it. I do. I just think I think that's something that they enjoy, and I don't think they actually have always spent that much attention to it in the past. So I think they don't mind losing that control of it.
Let's say a customer is running a legacy software on-premise. They have years and years of data and many customizations. Are you confident each and every customization could be converted to an extension for a cloud migration to Business Central?
Yes. A year ago, my answer would have been no. Today, I believe that yes, we can, but there might have to be some thought and a little bit of work arounds and ways to get some of the stuff done. But yes, I think
Okay.
it's very, very close to being able to.
And the last question before I pass it on over to Ken. If you implemented Business Central Cloud for the Dallas Cowboys, do you think this seamless integration with Power BI would uncover years and years of wasteful spending that has ultimately resulted in absolutely no Super Bowl appearances for the past 20 years?
No
Can I
comment.
answer that?
Please.
No comment.
I think it would. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. It'll save a lot of money.
This is a speed round, may I remind you to.
All right, nice job, Mark. Nice job.
All right, let's wrap up with a couple beer questions here. Thank you, Mark, for coming out. But before we move along to our next segment here, I just got to know, what was your favorite beer when you turned 21 years old?
At 21, it would have been Miller Lite or Amstel Light. Before 21, it would have been the old style 30-pack. Not my favorite, just the most convenient to get.
421.
Yeah.
And how about today?
Today, as you can see, I am a fan of wheat beers. So my favorite beer would probably be Oberon or Goose Island 312.
And now, let's see if you're truly a beer nerd or not. So you suddenly develop an allergy to alcohol that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. But somehow there's one specific drink or brand or cocktail or wine that doesn't negatively affect you with this allergy. What is that? What do you hope that drink is?
A little upset that you try to put this type of thing on me, but it would definitely be whiskey. I would hope I'm not allergic to whiskey. I would drink whiskey before beer. But I will be honest, I'm a kind of split, depending on where and what I'm doing. Small settings, whiskey; larger settings, beer. How's that sound?
That sounds great. So next time we come in, maybe we'll bring
Have
in
a true
we'll do
shot.
a shot,
Yeah.
a true shot of Business Central and whiskey.
If I'm ever invited back, it did take over a year before you guys invited me. Absolutely.
Yep.
And we do fact check this separately, so
Yeah, so
that's a negative.
We'll allow you to, we'll let you stick around and talk about these other segments here. But thank you again for coming in and joining us. And I'm sure that people, learn something from your
Yeah.
insights and experience.
Definitely appreciate it. Before we move on, do we want to rate the beer, or do we want to?
I could use another beer.
I'm ready.
We will.
Yeah.
All right. What would you give it?
I'm gonna go 87.
87. Pretty high.
I do. I like it. It's like I said. It's easy drinking. I think we all agree. We're all opening up another one
it's
here.
Easy to get down.
And I think it's flavorful. I'd buy it for sure and drink it. So
And since this is your top
Yeah, this
beer,
is
what
one
would
of
you
my
give it?
top. This is one of my top beers. This one is I drink a lot between Oberon 312 and this. I stick to wheat beers. I would put this one probably around a 91.
Not bad. I also like it. It could use a lime. No, I'm just kidding. I'd probably give it a solid 85. It's light. It's not my favorite light beer. You know, I mean, you guys know I like Coronas and things like that, so I would opt for that before this.
Yep.
But it's definitely good.
Definitely more weedy than a Corona.
Yeah.
Well, at least I did not go under a 50, which means it's a drinkable beer, so I don't feel
Correct.
bad about bringing this in.
Correct. All right, next up, I think we're talking about the Business Central 2020 Release Wave 2 and all the features that accompany it, so stay tuned.